If you're missing Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, or even Joe Flacco this week, you may be in luck, because I think there's a few guys you can take a shot at this week and have pretty decent results. And let's talk about every matchup on the Week 10 slate today and try to figure out what quarterbacks are going to be your best bet if you need to stream somebody this week. Or if you're trying to decide between a couple of different quarterbacks, we've got you covered too. And I can tell you right away on Thursday Night Football, I am staying away from Geno Smith going up against the Denver Broncos on the road, allowing the third fewest fantasy points per game. I get it, Geno Smith coming off a game where he threw 4 touchdown passes last week, but he still has 7 interceptions in his last 5 games. And this matchup is not fun. Bo Nix, on the other hand, has a solid opportunity this week. He had a really good floor last week going up against a tough Houston defense. And going up against Las Vegas this week, he absolutely could be in for another solid game as well, with a little bit more upside this week. Atlanta and Indianapolis will be going at it over in Berlin, and Michael Penix, since their bye 3 games ago, has been playing very well. In his 3 games since the bye, he has at least 20 completions in each game, has thrown for at least 220 pass yards in each game, 5 passing touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. He did miss week 8 when he was injured and Kirk Cousins had to step in, but that didn't do anything to move the needle back to Cousins. Penix's job is safe, and he's been playing very well recently. Atlanta's defense, just like their team, has experienced some up and downs this season, and they've been banged up on the defensive line as well. But for Daniel Jones this week, is last week with 5 turnovers the start of something, or is it just a blip on the radar? This is where we find out what Daniel Jones is made of, because in the past, he could have a bad game and we would see it sprawl over into other games. But the new Daniel Jones that we've seen, maybe it can be a whole lot different, and maybe he can find his top 12 upside once again, even in a tough matchup in an international game. Jackson Dart has a huge ceiling this week going up against the Chicago Bears defense, currently allowing the 7th most fantasy points per game. And Jackson Dart is playing like a quarterback one, both on the field and in fantasy football. Last week was his 4th QB1 performance since taking over as a starter. He has at least 1 passing touchdown in every start this season, and at least 1 rushing touchdown in all but 1 start as well. Last week against Cincinnati, we saw the ceiling. Caleb Williams is extremely talented, but he needs to clean up his game a little bit, and if he can do that, he could be a top-end quarterback every single week. But at times this season, we've seen him in really good matchups disappear, and then all of a sudden come out of nowhere to play well again. Well, Caleb Williams, I need you to clean it up. That's why you're going to be my Harry's Clean It Up Player of the Week at the quarterback position. If Caleb Williams can play a clean game going up against the New York Giants this week, who allow the 4th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, we could be in for a top 6, top 4 even week for Caleb Williams. He was the quarterback 1 last week and could be in a similar position once again. And Headliner Nation, I don't think I have ever promoted a product on this channel that I believe in as much as Harry's. You can see my face. I am a guy that has to shave often, and I just shaved my beard off, and it's not easy to do, but when you've got Harry's in your bathroom, oh man, they definitely are a huge help. And I was using Harry's even before they started sponsoring us, so I know exactly what their product can offer you. And with the holidays fast approaching, they can make great stocking stuffers or gifts for everyone in your life. And it's not just razors. They have shampoos, body washes, colognes, deodorant, everything you need to help take care of your significant other or someone close to you. And if you use the link down in the description below or head on over to harrys.com/headliners, you can get their Harry's Plus trial set for only $10. So if you've never used Harry's before, use the link in the description below, get their trial set, and experience one of the best shaves and cleanups that you will with any product out there. Caleb Williams has 250 or more yards in 3 of his last 4 games. This was only his first multi-touchdown game though since week 3. That's where we need a little bit more upside for him. He's giving us solid yards, but clean it up, Caleb Williams. Stay on the field, figure out those accuracy issues a little bit, score some more touchdowns. Josh Allen was in his typical MVP form last week, and now he gets a Miami defense in which he was the quarterback 5 against just a few weeks ago. Miami's defense is also allowing the 8th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks as well. He's a top 3 option. I'm going to go ahead and just sit Tua this week. He's way too up and down for me, and this is not a great matchup going up against Buffalo, who's allowing the 2nd fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. And again, it's the up and downs with Tua. For instance, he had a bad matchup against Atlanta, and he throws for 4 touchdowns. But then he has a great matchup going up against Baltimore, and he has 0 touchdowns and an interception at that point. I just feel like there's different options that you can roll with. I'd rather play Jacoby Brissett over Tua right now. Lamar Jackson looked great in his return last week. 204 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns. And if you take out the game in which he got injured, he's been a top 9 quarterback in his last 4 contests. QB4, QB3, QB3, and QB9. JJ McCarthy, great performance last week on the road against Detroit in the state of Michigan, a state that he's never lost in. Just had to throw that out there. For JJ McCarthy, though, at home against Baltimore this week, it's actually a better matchup. Baltimore still allowing the 9th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Baltimore has allowed more than 200 passing yards this season in every single game but one. And in both of JJ McCarthy's big starts this season, he's only got 3, one of which he was injured in halfway through and tried to finish the game. He has 2 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown in those healthy games. Coming out of the bye, Dillon Gabriel's getting a New York Jets offense that has allowed the 10th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, and just traded arguably one of the better cornerbacks in all of football, Sauce Gardner. So things are going to get easier for him this week, but I still don't think I could even move him to a fringe start at this point. Number one, he was dealing with a shoulder injury prior to the bye, and as of this recording, we haven't had a major update as of yet. His best game this season was in Week 8 against New England when he finishes the QB 18, so he hasn't had a ton of ceiling either, and I do feel like Shedeur Sanders is just lurking, and at any point in time, they decide to try and figure out if they've got something in Sanders, Dillon Gabriel could end up sitting a little bit as well. I'm not entirely sure that the Jets even know what they're doing at the quarterback position. Justin Fields, he wasn't going to start in their last game, and then Tyrod injures himself, and then Justin ends up starting, and then they end up getting a win, and he played well. Are they going to go back to him this week? Are they going to put him back to the bench? If it's Justin Fields, I don't mind putting him as a fringe start this week. I know it's tough against Cleveland, who allow the 7th fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks, but we know Justin Fields can make things work with his legs. The big thing for me with Justin Fields is that this defense is significantly worse now for the rest of the season than it was last week. So even though they haven't been winning a whole lot of ball games, Justin Fields is still going to have a lot of negative game script going forward, which means more volume and more opportunity for points, even if the ceiling isn't top 12. New England and Tampa Bay, and I said it last week, I'll say it again, and I actually feel like I've said it for a few weeks now. Drake May is a must start. He has more than 200 passing yards in every single game this season, and he has a 17-4 touchdown to interception ratio. Baker Mayfield's had a couple of down performances, and those come after 4 straight games when he was a top 12 quarterback. One was against a banged-up Detroit secondary that I am very shocked that they couldn't take more advantage of. And moving forward, we will see if Baker Mayfield can get back to that top 12 upside. Going up against New England, I would look at him more as like anywhere between 8 and 12 if you're looking for that upside, but he should still have a solid floor. Tyler Shough wasn't awful in his first start. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of room for improvement, and maybe he'll get better as the season goes on, but that's for New Orleans to figure out, not for us to figure out with him in our fantasy lineup. So Tyler Shough, after they just traded one of his wide receivers, I'm going to go ahead and skip on him for right now, especially against Carolina, allowing the 9th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, and just made Jordan Love's life really tough last week. Bryce Young still is not getting the job done. He only has 1 game this season with more than 200 passing yards, and in 3 games, he's had multiple touchdown passes. Outside of that, you're looking at high 100s at best, maybe a touchdown pass, and that hasn't been enough fantasy points all season to consider playing him. We would need to see significantly more improvement in his upside if we want to go that route. Jacksonville and Houston, and Trevor Lawrence in this matchup, with Houston allowing the fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, I'm out on Trevor Lawrence this week. It's really the rushing touchdowns that have helped him out so far, and some of them are not by design. They're just him scrambling and then making it into the end zone. T-Law would have one top 12 performance this season if you took away some of those rushing touchdowns. And he was the QB 28 against Houston back in week 3. 9 touchdown passes this season, 6 interceptions. If CJ Stroud is able to play, I'll go with CJ Stroud this week. It's a solid matchup. But for Davis Mills, I don't really want to go that route. If you're in a position where you just have to find somebody to play, maybe you're in a 2-quarterback, a super flex league, Davis Mills, if you need to run with him with just 1 week, it may not be the worst thing. Jacksonville allows the 6th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, so he might be able to get the job done for you this week, or at least not kill your team. But I would rather prefer CJ Stroud be out there, so we'll continue to monitor him. Since taking over as the starter, Jacoby Brissett has been the QB 7, QB 12, and QB 10. And he was just named the starter for at least 1 more week. But it sounds like Jonathan Gannon is going to roll with Brissett. I don't know if this is kind of a makeup injury for Kyler Murray, and maybe, yes, he is a little bit banged up, but he could play if needed, but Jonathan Gannon doesn't want him to because the team's been better with Brissett. I don't know. The offense is much better. And to me, Jacoby Brissett is a fringe start. Seattle has a tougher defense. I get it. But hey, this is a guy that's been getting the job done. Last week, Arizona's defense really did a good job of limiting the ceiling for Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. So does Sam Darnold have the same ceiling that we've seen from him recently? Arizona is allowing the 8th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. And I get Sam Darnold is on a tear. He's been a top 10 quarterback in 3 of his last 4 games and at least 2 passing touchdowns in 5 of 7 games. When I look at Sam Darnold this week, is the ceiling there? Maybe not, but he's played well enough that I would say he's got a solid floor still. Matthew Stafford has 9 touchdowns combined in his last 2 games, and now he owns a 21-2 touchdown to interception ratio on the season. Dude is playing like an MVP candidate right now, and for fantasy purposes, he's an absolute must start. The LA Rams are allowing the 5th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, and it sounds like Mac Jones should end up being the starter for at least a little while longer. Brock Purdy does not sound like he's close to being back. Unless you ask Kyle Shanahan next week and he says he is close to being back like he was a couple of weeks ago, but then we found out he wasn't close to being... It's the NFL. Whoever knows who's telling the truth about what injuries at this point. Mac Jones has not been a top 12 quarterback since back in week 5. And that was against the LA Rams when he was the quarterback 10. So he hasn't had a great ceiling as of recent, but the last time he did, it was against this same team. I don't know if I would bank on that again this week. This is a great matchup for Jared Goff to get himself going again. He wasn't terrible last week, but the offense as a whole just didn't look great. But I credit that more to Minnesota than anything that has to do with Detroit. Going up against Washington this week, they allow the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. I expect Jared Goff to do just fine. Marcus Mariota is going to be a sit for me, and I know last week against Minnesota, they struggled. But Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and J.J. McCarthy are way different than Marcus Mariota, Deebo Samuel, and Zach Ertz. Aaron Rodgers is another quarterback that's not really offering a ton of upside, but he's got a solid floor. He's more of a quarterback 2 and 2 QB and super flex leagues for me than a guy that I want to try and consistently roll with in a 1 QB league. But he's had 0 games outside the top 24 quarterbacks this season, so he's provided a solid floor every single week. The Chargers allow the 4th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, though, so I would expect more of the same floor play from him this week. Justin Herbert now has 3 straight games where he's a top 4 quarterback or higher, and he's also thrown 2 or more touchdowns in the last 4 games. Pittsburgh's defense allows the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. All of that said, this is a recipe for a great week. Monday Night Football is going to be a ton of fun with Philadelphia, Green Bay, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love. And Jalen Hurts before the bye was on fire. He had 3 straight games where he finished as a top 8 quarterback. He threw for 8 touchdowns and only 1 interception during that span. And the best part about it, he's doing it as a passer. He's only had 1 rushing touchdown. Last week against the Panthers was the first time this season Jordan Love didn't have at least 1 passing touchdown in a game. And I don't love the fact that they struggled with the Panthers last week and now they get Philadelphia, coming off of a bye. I think Jordan Love is more of a safe QB2 this week, but I do think he could have a potential to sneak his way into the top 12 if we see a lot of negative game script. Headliner Nation, what are you doing at the quarterback position this week? Let us know down in the comments below. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, hype the video, become a member if you're interested in extra content, and then of course, hey, subscribe to the channel with the bell notifications on, so anytime we drop new content, you'll know about it right away. For now, Headliner Nation, stay safe and healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.